Hey everyone, this is Tom Kras. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to continue with our series on how to learn common capture the flag Linux exploits using the damn vulnerable web application platform. In a previous video we installed DVWA with Docker. Today we can focus on LFI, local file inclusion. So what is local file inclusion? Local file inclusion is a hack where we can browse files on remote web servers. This is completely unintentional and is never what the developer intended. Let's get into an example so you can see what I mean. Okay, so first of all, we need to open up our DVWA platform. We can log in using the default username and password, which is admin and password. And first thing we've got to do is to take a look at the security level. So we make sure we always set the security level to low when starting these things and submit. Okay, so what is LFI? Local file inclusion. So web browsers allow us to view HTML pages as their intended use, but they're also capable of looking at other files as well, like text files. For example, on this system here, we can actually browse our local files. So if we type in etc passwd, if I learned how to type it properly, it mightn't be so bad. And bingo, up pops our etc password file with all of our user accounts and details. I mean, it's not much good here because we're locally on the system and it's very easy for us to just cat it out in the terminal. But suppose you're on a remote server. Suppose you were able to do something. Suppose Google was running on a Linux server and you were able to type in www.google.com and type in, say, etc passwd and review all of the user accounts on Google server. I mean, this would be really, really bad. And it's exactly what an LFI is. So let's get into exploiting LFI in the DVWA platform. First thing you're going to take a look at is the tab for the file exclusion. You hop in here and you can see that the allow URL include is not enabled. The allow URL include is what should be enabled to stop file inclusion from happening. There is a problem with this though. I mean, it prevents remote file inclusion, but what about local file inclusion? Sometimes we want that, sometimes we don't, but that's a different problem. So we see on the vulnerability file inclusion page, we've got 3 different files. We've got file 1, which seems hello admin and prints out an IP address. We've got file 2, which seems to be just some sort of a text file. And we have file 3, which is, just punches out some headers and sends it back. Okay, fine. But what exactly do we see here in the URL? In the URL, we can see that we have this PHP. In the URL, we seem to have this the file listed called file 2. In order to exploit LFI, we can change this. What can we change it to, says you? We can change it to, using file transversal, we can change this to whatever we want. So any file that we can read inside the file system should be available to us. Now remember, the user is the user that's running the web server. So it's probably something like HTTP or www-http or something like that. So you're not going to have access to every file, but etc password is more than enough to get the list of users on the system, and then we could use something like Hydra to brute force. Because we have a user, we can brute force the password of that user. So you're probably saying, what is file transversal? So first of all, let's take a look from the terminal. My current working directory is home Tom Kras desktop. Okay. If I wanted to go up a directory, the easiest way to do it is to use file transversal. So I can go cd .. which means go up one directory. And now if I do a pwd, I can see I'm in home Tom Kras, no longer in the desktop directory. If I do it one more time, do pwd, I'm in the home directory. If I do it one more time, pwd, I'm in root directory. So I can go back to my home Tom Kras directory. And suppose I wanted to see a file like etc password, I can put in the relative path, etc, or the complete path, passwd, and I can see the file. Now sometimes we're not allowed to do that. with LFIs. We need to be able to display the file from our current location. So based on where we are now, Tom Kras desktop, relative to this, how do we display the etc password file? Well, we just do what we did previously, except for we don't do it once. That will bring us up to the Tom Kras. That will bring us up to home. That will bring us up to root, etc passwd password. Sorry, passwd. So there we go. Cat // // etc password relative to where we are. This is the key with LFI. So if we go back to our web page and we want to show the etc password file, we need to go relative to where we are. So we know that there's a directory called FI. We know there's a directory called Vulnerabilities. So it's a minimum of 2 directories up to get to the root directory. I highly doubt that this Vulnerabilities is hanging off the root directory. So I'd say it's a minimum of at least 3. So let's start with 3 of them. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Sorry. Hey. What am I doing? etc passwd. And no, nothing. Page is blank. Okay. Let's try 4 of them. Come on, don't let me down. Let's try 4 of them. Nothing. Okay, and 5. 5 is usually the max. Let's see. Ha! Okay, bingo. So now we have the etc password file displayed at the very top of our web page. Now, this is all very well and good, but it would be nicer if it was displayed a little bit better. And hey, we're Linux guys, so let's do it through the command line. This makes it much cooler. So easy thing to do is just copy the URL over into our command line, clear the screen, and we use something like curl. If you're not familiar with curl, curl allows us to transfer data between different services. Lots of protocols are included, including HTML, which is what it's probably most popular for. Put it inside brackets because we've got some weirdness going on here with this question mark, and the shell might not interpret that properly. So what happens if we just curl this file? We get nothing. So why do we get nothing? We get nothing because of authentication. If you remember, when we first came to our page, we had to log in. So obviously you cannot browse to the page unless you're logged in. You get nothing. So we need to be able to authenticate on our curl commands. How do we do that? Usually, especially in these types of programs, these simpler types of programs, authentication is done by cookies. So let's log in and see if we can pick up the cookie paste. So it should be fairly straightforward. On Firefox, you have an inspect. You can inspect any element on the page. How do you do this? With Control, Shift, and C opens up the inspection tool. All of our different web browsers allow us to do this. So Firefox, Chrome, sorry, I was just interrupted there. Firefox, Chrome, Edge, they all allow it. It's just different options. Usually you just right-click, inspect, it's there. The part that we're interested in is cookies. So inside Firefox, the cookies is under Storage tab, under Cookies, and we have 2 cookies here. We've got a cookie called PHP SSID, and we've got a cookie called Security. So let's add those cookies into our you can't copy paste. Let's add this cookie into our curl command. What is a cookie? Only really a fancy header. So let's add a fancy header. Okay, cookie. Cookies are yeah, you have to start a cookie with a cookie, you do a colon and then a space, and let's put in our first one, which is the SSID, and it equals. We go back to the page, copy and paste, and then we add in our other one, which is security equals okay, let's have a look at this. We have some success here. So we managed to print out our page, and look, right at the top of it we get the file. It's in a better format, but we still have all this HTML junk that we're not really interested in. Something to take note of if you're not familiar with the etc shadow file or the etc password file. Each new line has a user, And within that line, there are a number of fields, and they're separated by colons. So the first field is the user, second one is the password, then we have the user ID, the group ID, home directory, and the shell. Okay. So let's use some regular expressions to grep out the passwords. Okay, so we know that this is a password file. So password files always begin with a user. So using regex, we can say at the beginning of the string, and use a full stop. Full stop represents all characters except spaces, and use a plus, so it's repeated. And then we use up until it reaches a semi or a colon. Once the colon is reached, then it should match. Okay, so that also pulled out some other stuff that we're not interested in. But we also know that we have an X here. And let's put the X in, and bingo. Now we've just got our we've also got this. What's this? This is the status bar, a progress bar from curl. We can get rid of this with the -s option. Attach to curl. Okay, there we go. And we have our shadow file. All good. Yeah, it's perfect. So now we have our shadow file. Okay. So it's such simple, but DVWA offers us some difficulty levels in this too. So you can go into DVA security and you can set the difficulty level to be harder. Let's get rid of this. We don't need this. You can set the difficulty level or the security level to be medium and submit. So what happens when we have the security level set to medium? Does it work? So let me copy the command back over, or copy the URL, should I say, back over, paste it in, nothing. So it's not really that it's making it harder, it's just that each security level requires a different way to exploit this. For the first one, it's the easiest. You can just use file transversal. For the medium one, to be honest, it's not really much more difficult. It's probably even easier. There's a check in the PHP code for these ... // and it automatically excludes them. But we can easily bypass this by just pointing directly to the etc password file. And here we go. Simple. No problem. And as for if we set the security to be the hard, let's see, we've got, by the way, possible it doesn't work at all. So high is as good as it gets. If we set it to high and the submit, and we try our LFI with this again, it's a different error. File not found. Interesting. What happens if we point directly to etc password? Same error. I'm just curious, if we put in some random characters, what happens? Same. Okay. So it says file not found. So it's looking for a specific file. Now again, as I mentioned, the difficulty here is not really that it's getting harder, it's just that it's using different approaches. If you remember from earlier on, where we typed in our file, etc passwd, we were able to pull up, sorry, typo again, we were able to pull up our password file directly by using this. You can also pass this to the LFI as well. So this page section here will take this file variable, and you can hit enter, and now we've got it here. Yeah, so one other thing maybe I might show you with Gwen is just in the inspect tools. If we look at the storage and we look at the cookie again, you can see that the security for the cookie is set to high, but the PHP session ID is the same, which means we can still pull this information from the command line. All we need to do is just to change this to high, set the security level to high, and modify the etc password section to be file, F-I-L-E, and bingo, we can get it. So guys, my name is Tom Kraz. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you found it useful, please like and subscribe. Any comments, leave them below. If there's any links, I will put them into the description section. And I'm out of here. Bye bye.